Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Joe Quesada Day, so we're taking a look at the Batman SWORD of AZRAEL miniseries. I originally got into this, jumping onto the Nightfall series in the early 90s when I was about 12 years old, somewhere in the middle, so somewhere around parts 6, 7, or 8, and then backtracking to get the first few parts of Nightfall, and then the Batman Detective prologue issues. And there was also this miniseries that was even prologue to all that stuff. But those single issues, even though they were fairly recent, were pretty much cost prohibitive for me at that time. Their value had kind of shot up because rumors were going around that Azrael would be the one replacing Bruce Wayne as Batman, which did come to fruition right at the end of Nightfall. So there was this alternative that came out, a great trade paperback for a really decent price, even back then. So I was happy to be able to at least get my hands on it and read it back then. And today we're going to be looking at that. This is the original trade paperback I got. Not something that I lost and had to, repurchase at any point. So it's a little worse for the wear. It's got some rounded corners and stuff, but just a lot of fond memories of this one from back in the day. So I'm going to start with issue 1 today. And we're going to look at the issue 1 cover because there's a gallery within the trade paperback. But because we've got this trade paperback, we got to talk real quick about this great wraparound cover. Beautiful design. You've got kind of your classic, superhero shot on the cover here. And then your montage in the back with all the other kind of secondary characters involved in the storyline, all kind of wrapped around in this ring of fire, which makes sense because fire is definitely very much associated with Azrael, as you'll see when we go through the reviews of each of the 4 issues. And just a really cool looking image for sure. It's got the Joe Quesada dynamics, the dark shadows that he takes a little bit, I think, from Mike Mignola, but makes his own. His specific kind of way of drawing musculature is kind of on display here. The leg muscles. I mention it for 2 reasons. One, always kind of bugged me that Azrael, when he's his alter ego, just regular old Jean-Paul Valley, as he's called, or Jean-Paul Valley, if you want to pronounce that in English, kind of a skinny dude with skinny arms and skinny legs. And then when he turns into Azrael, his legs just balloon up and are insanely muscular and huge. And that's going to be a little more subdued within the series because, again, second reason I mentioned the Joe Quesada musculature here is it's slowly going to kind of fade away a little bit because of the third member of the creative team. So Dennis O'Neill's the writer, Joe Quesada is the artist, penciler, and Kevin Nolan is the inker. Now, Kevin Nolan is an amazing artist in his own right. People love being inked by him. But what ends up happening is he's a pretty heavy-handed inker, different style than Klaus Janson, but kind of the same thing, where what happens is no matter who's laying out the images underneath, it ends up looking like Kevin Nolan art, right? And certain aspects of his art start to shine through in the aesthetic more than the original artist. So where I feel like the balance is pretty good here between both of them on the cover, as we go through the series, I'll try to point it out and remind you, it feels like slowly but surely Kevin Nolan's taken over more and more of the aesthetic of the book. So that was the trade paperback cover. Real quick, I'm going to jump to the back of the trade, preview, and look at the original wraparound cover, which again, I don't know, I feel like this is probably the most Quesada art we're going to see in this whole series, right? I do feel like most of this is pretty representative of Joe Quesada, the musculature, the details on the face, the line work, the little tick lines on the gloves, right? Great image. Where I see maybe a little bit more Kevin Nolan, this one is with the background elements, right? They certainly feel like his aesthetic, even though Joe Quesada still, some of the textures shine through here. And the actual architectural design is Joe Quesada, and he's really good at it, and that's why these buildings are so beautiful and intricate. Great background. This kind of stuff actually going across from building to building kind of reminds me of Batman 1989, right? That famous scene where Batman brings Vicky Vale up. Don't know if that was the inspiration for that, but it's a good graphic element in the background for sure. Kind of a architectural, industrial kind of vibe, right? And again, the musculature, there's just a specific way. I know this is very, very, very picky, but that Quesada draws the leg muscles and stuff that's very much on display here. You can see that will go kind of by the wayside throughout the series. Again, because of the Kevin Nolan inking. And not, the art is definitely a hybrid of both guys. And I think it's really cool. Always thought it looked great, and I loved it back in the day. But now I can kind of see where, again, that heavy-handed Kevin Nolan inking happens. But early on, we still got a lot of Joe Quesada. Let's talk about Azrael's design. We saw him on the cover. He's the son, the more modern version. This is the father, right, who's got the more kind of old-timey, fashiony Azrael costume. I think both designs are amazing. It's almost sad to me when I was, even back in the day as a kid, looking at this great design, that it's only going to be here for a few pages to introduce the father. He dies in the storyline pretty quickly, and that design goes away. Azrael's going to wear it at first. This will be his design, but then he'll get his own new, more modern costume, I guess. But yeah, I always felt it was a shame that this beautiful design that QUESADA worked on just wasn't used that much. Even though the more modern Azrael costume is also a really awesome design, you know, that kind of obviously takes cues from this costume as well. Both are really good designs. I just would have liked to have seen more of this one than what we actually got. Great way to start right in the middle of the action, right, with Azrael and this fiery sword. Just a great visual. I'm going to mention real quick, Laverne Kanzierski does the colors on this one, and I think the colors are pretty standout all throughout the series, right? Good color choices. We got some monochromatic kind of shots here and there that really work with the mood. Yeah, just great coloring throughout. So here's an example of where, you know, when we get the close-up shots, you know, what you'll notice, it looks more like Joe Quesada. When we get the further away shots like this one here, it looks more like Kevin Nolan. That's going to be kind of pretty much throughout the series how it's going to be. And like I said, some of the Quesada aestheticisms are slowly going to disappear to be taken over by the Kevin Nolan ones. But a great sequence here where Azrael is basically confronting a member of their secret guild who's betrayed them, right? But he's ready for him. His name's Liha, and he's got armor-piercing bullets, right, that, you know, aren't supposed to kill Azrael as he's the avenging angel, but they do, because underneath that costume it's just a regular guy, right? Well, regular. We'll find out later more of the secrets of the system, and that'll clue you in as to who Azrael really is. Great shot here, very dynamic. I definitely recognize the layout and the foreshortening as something Joe Quesada does. Looks great. Again, you know, the architecture in the background still feeling pretty much like Joe Quesada and not so much like Kevin Nolan. This is a great sequence. The angle, again, Joe Quesada I mentioned before, he's really good at picking interesting angles and doing stuff where, like, this is almost two panels, really, if you think about it, right? You've got these two here that are, like, head-on, you know, on a flat horizon, right? And then behind them, the layer behind them, everything is tilted. So it shouldn't really work, but design-wise, it just, there's something to it that it does work here. And it's almost like, you know, they're giving you the impression that they're, you know, behind, in front of a screen or something, and the screen is tilted, but even then you get a bit of the camera here that's tilted at that same angle. So just an interesting choice that really helps them stand out, I guess, against this angled design. And the goal, obviously, with the angle back here is to create that slight sense of chaos, because you've got Azrael crashing through the window, falling down, and coming in onto the scene here. And basically he jumps on one of the horses here, kicks. Great panel here, because a lot going on. Azrael lands on a horse while he kicks. The guy who I guess is manning the horse here kicks him off and then runs off. And what's implied here in the visuals is great too, as he runs off. Just a quick shot of these guys, very tight and cropped, of these two news reporters, and then just a bunch of kind of red liquid on the ground on the horse, and a lot of splatter in the inking here, and her shoe flying up, and their microphones kind of flying through the air. And as he continues here, you get kind of a splotch of, it's all black, but you can assume maybe that's blood there. So don't actually see it, but it's heavily implied that they've been trampled, right, stampeded by the horses, and later on we will find out that that is what happened. So I just thought that was a great sequence in, you know, great storytelling without literally telling you what happened, leaving it, you know, maybe a little bit ambiguous and then confirming it later. So no actual violence needed to be shown, right? Not that I'm against gore and violence, that's fine. Obviously I understand this is, you know, a DC mainstream comic, right? They can't show too much. So sometimes a sequence like this is just more clever, right, than if you had seen everything. Again, to add to that chaos, you've got the angle here, you got another angled horizon line here, and this is something I don't see a lot, right? This effect with the lines, we do see a lot. Of course, it creates movement, dynamism in the direction you want the character to be going, right? That's why it was used here. But the interesting choice of the colorist to kind of alternate between greens, blues, and a bit, I mean, that's almost yellow. It's a very light green. To alternate colors through there is something I don't see that much, and I think looks really cool and works really well here. You know, I guess trying to get across the colorful aspects of this parade that's going on here, even through all the violence and carnage. And just, again, Joe Quesada, great at layering, right? The legs of this character in the foreground, Azrael and the horse in the middle ground, horses in the background. All these extra little things, the balloons, a bit of the ripped banner here, the can of Coca-Cola, the bag of popcorn and the little bits of popcorn flying out. All of these things help add layering to the image. to create that sense of depth, right? That's really deep in this one, even though we don't have any actual background elements other than the speed lines. You know, this lady here, one guy just in the back here, all that stuff. Listen, there's even one last little guy here, and you can see his arm out behind this lady's leg. So all of this just adds to that sense of depth and layering. Quesada's a master at it. All right, so Azrael, you know, crashes off of the horse here. And basically what he's leading himself to his son's apartment here, right? And he's kind of taking off the garments. He's trying to take off all the garments so no one will see Azrael or know that Azrael was there. And of course, Jean-Paul Vallée, his son, very surprised to see his father here. You know, I guess, what's doing? What are you doing? And what are you dressed up in this costume, right? That's kind of his questioning, I guess. So he's trying to get the doctor here so that his father doesn't die, but his father says no one must know of Azrael, and even his son doesn't know about it, right? So his father says, open the package. I left you with you earlier. It contains what you need. I have failed. You must not. So that's all Jean-Paul Vallée knows at this point, and his father's just died. Cut to Batman. Great shot here. Full silhouette, except for the windows and the Wayne tombstone here, right? Martha and Thomas, it says. Obviously, you know that if you know anything about Batman. Just a clever way to, you know, establish real quickly that we are at Wayne Manor. Pretty obvious, right? And again, Quesada picking that just great angle, tilted horizon with an upshot with a worm's eye view, and just really dynamic image with just very simple silhouettes. We get a sequence of Batman obviously entering the Batcave here, and we don't actually see him really up close until the next page, which is clever. He's always kind of far away as he's discussing basically what happened during the parade, right? And it says here that, you know, he was, I'll just read it for you. 4 were killed, including Sherry Port. Ah, yes, the television personality. You knew her, that's Alfred, and liked her. So Bruce liked her, so he's, you know, obviously he thinks something's kind of stinky with the situation, and you know, the cops found this bulletproof vest with bullet holes in it, right? So Batman looking to get to the bottom of things, and now we're back with Jean-Paul Vallée, and the narration is basically this little gnomey midget character called Nomos, who's basically going to become Jean-Paul Vallée's trainer to become Azrael, even though he's not exactly sure yet what all of this is and what's going on, right? And Nomos is going to explain it to him. This little guy here, kind of a mean Yoda, I guess is what I'd call him here. So he basically asked the big guy here to slap him every time he says something stupid. This whole sequence is great with Batman doing some actual detective work, right? Checking out, finding some of the bullets. He's checking out Lee Ha's apartment, right? Just the masterful work of Joe Quesada with the silhouette here. And again, I feel like in those moments, it's almost where we get the most pure kind of Joe Quesada inked by Kevin Nolan, because Kevin Nolan has no choice, but you know, he can't alter too much of the features and stuff because there are none, right? And the angles and stuff still very strong. This hand is definitely a Joe Quesada hand. He has a very distinct kind of gnarly way of drawing the hands, slightly angular, which I really like. And I'm going to talk about, you know, this whole scene as it being a Batman scene. The coloring is great, right? You got kind of that dark blue tone, pretty much overall not quite monochromatic, you know, little flourishes here and there of other colors, which is great. Just the beautiful, beautiful mood this kind of sets, I think is great. 2 other examples here. You know, if I look at this, I feel like that's very much Kevin Nolan, but this one and this one here, you know, I definitely see a lot more of the Joe Quesada aesthetic with, you know, the furrows on his brow here, you know, the chin, the lines around the mouth, and even the hatching here to a certain extent, and the definition of the muscles and stuff is very Quesada. So Batman set up this microphone that actually does exist, right? You can look this up. It's a laser, and it picks up the vibrations off the glass from anyone talking inside that room. So he's checking out Lee Ha for clues as to what's going on here. So this is just where Nomos is going to introduce him to the idea of hypnosis and entering the system. This always confused me as a kid. I know it's kind of weird to point out, but I will. You know, as a kid, I wasn't sure, or at first I thought we were seeing Batman's eyes and mouth, which just felt a little bit off from the overall kind of proportions of the character. And then eventually it took me a while to realize that that's actually the top, or his chin and the top of his upper lip right under the nose, right? That's actually showing there. So maybe because this is too small, maybe that should have been a little bit clearer. You know, maybe the shadow between the nose and the mouth could have been separated. Definitely feels, like I said, more of a Kevin Nolan thing than a Quesada thing. I think a full silhouette, right, where you just see the ears there, that would have worked really well too. So this is just Batman getting a little bit of information, any information he can off of Gordon. And as he visits the alleyway where Azrael was last seen, he discovers a grate, looks into it, and finds the sword, right? Because, you know, eyewitnesses saw Azrael with a sword, and then, you know, the sword disappears at some point. So this is going to be a clue for Batman as to what's going on. And good transition here, a very kind of Alan Moore transition, where Batman sees the insignia, right, the crest of Saint Dumas, who is Saint Dumas, or Saint Dumas, I guess in English, who is the patron saint of the avenging angel of Azrael, rather. And then boom, the transition to Nomos holding it up for a little hypnosis session with Jean-Paul Vallée. And I like that. I'm pretty sure either this is the original or this one, and it's been photocopied and statted, and then statted again. Maybe this is the original because it's bigger. So it was probably drawn and thrown in here, shrunk down in these two, and then boom, we get a closer up shot, which makes sense. The line's bolder, bigger, right? You can kind of tell. Great surrealist splash page conveying to Jean-Paul Vallée basically all the aspects of Azrael, right? As he turns from this innocent young man into this avenging angel, and basically, you know, having the programming of the system come back up into Jean-Paul Vallée's conscious mind, right? That was pretty funny, almost like a psychedelic trip, right? And he's coming back. So almost Kelly Jones kind of vibe to this image here. So he asks his buddy Heinrich, I think his name, to hit him again, and boom, can't even, as, you know, Jean-Paul Vallée basically just reacts and kicks him in the knee there. And he's like, how'd I do that? How'd I know to do that? And that's, of course, part of the system, right? So he doesn't even know. And I like the line, though, down here. So I've become a tough guy. As if, you know, he doesn't quite believe it. And Nomos to say, no, not yet. You have skills and knowledge, but your body is soft and flabby. So I guess maybe for my earlier comment with the musculature, we're meant to believe that Jean-Paul Vallée will develop muscles as well through his training. I don't know the exact timeline here. I don't feel like when you read the book it's months, so it's a little odd that in a few days or weeks he develops all this musculature. But anyways, it's comics, right? So at the time when I was reading these comics, I did not know Oracle was originally Batgirl, that she'd been shot by the Joker and her spine was broken, but now that she was kind of in this role of helping out Batman with information, right? So I've always liked that idea with Punisher and Batman, that they have other people helping them out, right? It just doesn't make sense that one person on their own could really achieve all these things, even though, again, in real life, it's probably not very realistic, but at least within the context of the comic, it makes sense that characters, if you want to give it a certain realism, which the late 80s, early 90s, to a certain extent was all about, gritty realism, that's basically what they're kind of going for here. So yeah, just Oracle filling in Bruce, Batman, on, you know, more information about the Order of Saint Dumas, from which the sword originates from, right? Bits of training here. These are the sections where, you know, I start to see that, you know, this is really looking more like, in the aesthetic, like a Kevin Nolan aesthetic than a Joe Quesada aesthetic. It's starting near the end of this issue here. Up close, we get a bit more Joe Q, right? But again, as we move further back with some of the architecture even, we're just, this whole panel here could have just been drawn by Kevin Nolan. So Batman's getting closer, flies to Switzerland, which is where Nomos is training Jean-Paul Vallée. Get on a helicopter, and from the sky they can tell, you know, this whole, for a secret organization, it's kind of funny that they would make their crest, you know, be that visible from the sky. And that's, you know, where Bruce picks up on the fact that, yeah, it's got to be that cottage that we want here. So Nomos is aware and hears that there's an aircraft directly overhead. You know, that shouldn't be. Coincidentally, Leha has shown up in around the same time as this helicopter flown by Bruce Wayne, and is planning of obviously getting rid of the Order of Saint Dumas once and for all, getting rid of Nomos, you know, because he knows he's there. And, you know, I don't know if he's aware of this new version of Azrael that's being trained, but, you know, getting rid of a problem before it actually becomes one is what's going on here. And great shot graphically of the cabin blown up and the helicopter being caught in the explosion as well. And that's it for this issue. We're going to have to wait till next review to find out what happens next. So there you go, guys. That was my review of Sword of Azrael issue number 1. If you are subscribed and you're still watching, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. If you are watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. hit the like button. It really helps the channel, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are like-minded and into comic books just like we are. We've just hit the first milestone of 500 subs, so thank you very much. If you have friends out there who are into comics, tell them to check out the channel, King Comics 2021, and subscribe if they like what they see. That'll help us on our road to the next milestone of 1,000 subs. So thank you so much, guys, and have yourselves an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like!